What's going on, guys? This is Joe Young. Today I'm going to give you guys 5 tips on how to start a high-tech planted tank for beginners. Starting with tip number 5, lighting. Make sure you choose the right lighting for the plants that you're trying to grow. Now each plant has its own light requirements. If you're kind of like me where you kind of want to experiment with different types of plants, you have to make sure that you pick the right lighting system that can accommodate all those different spectrums. So a little bit of research ahead of time will definitely save you money on the long run. Number 4, the food source. In a planted tank, you also have to figure out how you're going to feed your plant. Plants are just like any other organism where they need food to survive. And in this case, plants need light and nutrients. So when you're setting up your high-tech planted tank, make sure you have the right substrate that will feed your plants via the root system or will keep your other plants alive for a very long time. If you're going to use sand, you got to figure out if you're going to dose the tank via liquid form or you're going to use root tabs to kind of introduce the nutrients via the roots. Number 3, CO2. CO2 is actually a huge component for plants to thrive in a high-tech tank. Think of CO2 as the air that we breathe. As humans, we need oxygen to breathe. Plants is actually the same way, but they need CO2. The one tip here with CO2 is make sure you have the conditions dialed in before you actually introduce any fish. The best tool is to use a CO2 indicator. Blue meaning that you don't have enough CO2, and when it actually turns green, that means you have plenty of CO2. And when it goes yellow, that means you have way too much CO2. This can take several days to dial in, up to a week, depending on how big your tank is. I recommend you make very small changes, wait a day, and then dial it in the next day. This will give you time to figure out if you're pumping way too much CO2 or too less CO2. Number 2, having an A-team. An A-team is your algae eating team. There's tons of algae eating fish that you can select from. To list a few good candidates that would be great for an A-team, 1 would be amano shrimps. 2 would be some sort of bristlenose pleco or a pleco that mainly eats algae. 3 would be snails. It could be nerite snails. You can go with SAEs, you can go with mollies, you can go with swordtails. These are just a few great, algae eating fish. Now what's important is you have to build your A-team around your main fish. For example, if you want to keep angelfish and discus in your tank, you may not want to keep shrimps or maybe even mollies or platies because discus and angelfish, they do get really big and they end up well eating some of these fish. So building your A-team around the main fish is very important here. And the last tip, be patient. I know a lot of people want instant results, but this is not how the hobby works. It takes time for your tank to kind of balance out and for you to kind of develop the experience and the knowledge of your tank. Each tank is going to be unique and different, so things may change slightly from one tank setup to the next tank setup. You can set up 2 identical tanks with the exact same equipment and the results can vary dramatically from each one. A great example was when recently I set up my 54-gallon tank. I had an algae breakout with tons of algae that kind of just consumed all the glass panels and just algae everywhere on the plants. This was during the cycling phase and I wasn't too worried. I knew that once I would introduce an A-team into that tank, they would take care of it. After a week of introducing the algae eaters into the tank is now spotless clean. So be patient with your tanks and trust in yourself. I hope these 5 tips will help you succeed in your high-tech planted tanks. If you guys aren't subscribed yet, make sure you guys are subscribed. And like always, until next one, guys, peace.